Hello and welcome, everyone. We're now live. I see people dropping in. We're going to give everyone a couple of minutes to arrive. So if you need to grab water, coffee, anything else, depending on what time of the day it is in your time zone, please do so. We're giving everyone 5 minutes so we can wait for everyone to arrive. All right. I promise we'll give it 5 minutes. We're already at 6, so I think we can safely start. Well, I'm sure people will continue arriving, but hopefully they'll catch on. All right. So we've got through the countries and temperature, and we talked about what's happening with the heat waves and the importance of this topic. I know Carlos has a question of his own. And sorry, I should have said, Oli and Carlos were your moderators today. We'll be managing all things admin. We have nothing insightful to share, but we're just here to manage the webinar. The people who have something insightful to share, Oliver and Mateus, and they'll have their turn to talk. Carlos, I'm going to turn over to you.
Super. Well, thank you, Olia. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you, everyone. So in this box in the right side of your screen, you're gonna see you have the chat. So please, guys, when you want, interact with our speakers, send your questions, because at the end of each presentation, we will have the Q&A session. And during the presentation, we'll have some polls. And just to start, we want to see who's in the room. So we have the first poll here. Please, guys, it's over to you. Like, what's your whole role when it comes to carbon offsets? Let's see, we're getting 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14. If you didn't find your role here, please drop in the chat. Nice. Almost 30, going up, 31, 32. Super. We can see.
It'll be very insightful for our speakers, because they can maybe adjust some of the information based on that. Tone down the language or turn it up. All right. I think we can switch to the next milestone. So since you all guys came here for the topic about the use of the satellite data when it comes to carbon offset projects, would you mind telling us if you're currently using any of the satellite data or not? We're going to launch another poll in 1 second. Yes, it's already on. So please let us know if you're currently using the data.
Super fast.
Hey, thank you, guys. You're so fast. Yes. All right, keep answering. And Carlos?
Time to start. So I will give you a quick intro on our expert speakers today. So we have here Oliver. Oliver is our Earth observation engineer here at Orbify. With years of experience in remote sensing and nature-based solutions, he also has a PhD in plant biomass and soils. And we also have, and obviously Oliver is based in London. So hi, Oliver. Thank you for being here. And Mateus is a forest carbon and geospatial remote sensing expert with experience in different projects around forest monitoring. He is our guest speaker today on behalf of Forest Base, right, Mateus? Which is his current company. Also, Mateus worked for Silveira in different projects as well. Mateus is a Brazilian, as I am, and he's based in Portugal right now. So yeah, this is pretty much our speakers today. And I think it's time to start, right?
Yep.
Oliver.
Just one admin point before we do so. So guys, as you know, we have 2 parts of the presentation divided between the 2 speakers. So they will each go in their order. First, Oliver, and then Mateus. You can feel free to drop in the questions in the chat as you're watching the presentation. All the questions will be taken after each presentation during the Q&A session. So like I said, please feel free to drop them in the chat as we go. They will all be addressed. If it happens so that there are too many questions, we cannot answer them during the Q&A session. Each of them will be addressed afterwards by email. So no questions will go unanswered. And just like Carlos said, we'll turn over to Oliver at this point. Oliver, the floor is yours.
Hi, welcome to the webinar. Yes, I'm just going to share my screen. Let's see if this works first time. It's always exciting, isn't it, to see if it works. What can everyone see? Slide deck? Just waiting for someone to give me a thumbs up.
Yep, we can see your slides. Yep, all good.
Great. Okay, let's go. Cool. So, yes, welcome to the webinar. I'm the first speaker. Excited. This is my first webinar with Orbify, and I'm going to do a brief introduction to satellites for nature-based solutions, going over some of the pros and cons of the technologies, some of the tools that we can use, and yeah, we can go from there. So what is a presentation on nature-based solutions without a sort of stark reminder that climate change is real and not improving? And I think we've been inundated recently with these quite terrifying and shocking images of wildfires. And I think it's clear that whilst you know, we don't have all the solutions to the climate problem, nature-based solutions are definitely something we need to increase. We need to accelerate the uptake of these projects, and you know, we need to do things urgently and remove barriers to these problems. Yeah, so we've seen, you know, rapid growth in carbon offsetting, and you know, there's some discussion points around that, but you know, we still need to unlock more of this potential if we're to make a serious dent in the climate crisis. Just as an illustration of this, I know Vera, which is probably the most widely used standard, has over like 1,500 carbon projects on their books. But as of last week, I think there was only 1,800 projects in their agriculture, forestry, and other land use category, and only a quarter of them were registered. So whilst they have a lot of large projects on their books, I think there's still significant room for expansion. And how do we do that? How do we get there? So why do we need remote sensing? Well, first of all, there's probably, and I didn't look at the poll and I should have done, but there's probably a lot of you who are in origination. So you're trying to build projects from scratch. And I'm sure a lot of the time you are looking at ways to assess whether or not your project is viable. Is it cost effective? Are you going to see returns on some of the substantial investments you may have to make right at the beginning of time? And you know, this is part of the problems that we need to overcome and needed to in order to increase the uptake and accessibility of carbon offsetting. There's also been, you know, while in the news, there has just, you know, there's been a lot of talk over the trust and the quality of some carbon offsetting projects, especially the avoided deforestation red style projects. And a big part of that, solving that issue, will be to provide models and data that can show what is happening on the ground, and that these offset projects are real, measurable, additional, and permanent. We also need better monitoring capabilities. That said, we're also at an exciting time, I think, in that we have a opportunity to build high quality carbon offsetting projects. And there's, you know, with the risk that climate change can wipe a lot of trees off the map quite quickly, you know, we need to increase our ability to assess risk, and we need to assess our, and we need to introduce biodiversity as well, like measuring that biodiversity. I'm not going to touch on that now, but it's part of what remote sensing could do in the future. So what are the benefits of remote sensing data? Actually, we have more high quality, sort of wide scale coverage with remote sensing data. It's non-intrusive, it's low cost, mostly because these satellites it's low cost for us, for the users especially. And there's increasing access to tools. Now, there's a lot of specialist information out there, and it can be difficult for people to access these tools and this information and this data. And so developing tools like the ones we're developing at Orbify will hopefully help people to unlock some of the data within remote sensing products. Also, we have satellite imagery products that go back 10 years or so, and that's really important for a carbon assessment, project assessment. And so we have the history as well, which I think is important. And then we have the frequency of that data that we can rely on, hopefully. We've also got new methodologies. So machine learning and deep learning are opening up new possibilities for what we can assess on the ground using existing remote sensing data sets. Just to show the exciting power of AI, I generated this satellite man, which I think you probably all confused at, but I quite liked, so I kept it in. It's here, this technology, and we need to use it wisely, and we can make use of it to tell us fantastic things about some of the forests that are maybe inaccessible, and there's not a lot of data there. So and there's an increasing community and guidelines and frameworks of best practice of how we can use this data to tell us real things rather than bad data. Data used badly can give us bad results, that kind of thing. I think there's a big caveat to this, that the idea that we will have fully automated project assessments using remote sensing data and models may never be a reality. I think there is sometimes we think that we can build big global data sets and big global models which will work everywhere all at once. And I think we need to be careful because land use is extremely complex, and it sits at the nexus of a huge amount of different things. And there's a reason why project assessments take a long time. And so we should avoid simplifying the problems, but what we should be doing is trying to build tools that will allow us to find out these answers. And I hope to convince you, if you're not already convinced, that there is a lot we can do with this data. What tools do we have at our disposal? So I think if you are not at the beginning of your interest in this field, I think you may be familiar with at least one of these really shiny looking satellites. They're quite cool looking, aren't they? Some of these have been around for a long time. MODIS instrument on the left, which is on board the Terra and Aqua satellites, have incredible revisit frequency of 1 to 2 days. This will soon be replaced by VIRS. I'm not sure if people are calling that VIRS or not, but feel uncomfortable pronouncing it that way. But it does suffer from poor resolution due to its sort of swath width and its orbit. So it has a very good revisit frequency, but its spatial resolution is quite poor. Landsat, as I think I just said, was probably the longest running program, and so we have lots of data from the various Landsat instruments. It's got very useful bands, and it has quite a low revisit frequency and sort of medium range spatial resolution. So you can do a lot with Landsat, and it's commonly used for like land cover maps and things like that. So it's a spectacularly useful instrument, but it's slightly overshadowed by Sentinel-2, which has, in general, far better spatial resolution. It has a slightly better revisit time, and it has an increased number of bands which are designed to investigate vegetation types and vegetation health and things like that a little bit better. So in the future, I think there'll be wide scale uptake of the Sentinel-2 satellites, but everything here has its use cases. What's, I think, particularly interesting about Sentinel-2 is the 10-meter spatial scale starts to become really relevant to the plot scale analyses that we need. I'd argue that Landsat 8 and the 30-meter sort of resolution that we get with some models are probably not so appropriate to the plot scale. So I thought it might be interesting just to see, so this is the Maui Island in Hawaii that we were looking at recently. during the wildfires, and I just thought it'd be interesting to see. This is the kind of spatial resolution. I'm missing my bounding box for that, but this is the kind of resolution you can see using these satellites. And because of the revisit frequency, this is very useful for fire alerts because we can get that daily update, but the resolution of that data is quite poor. Here's Landsat 8 suffering with some cloud. So one of the things about these passive satellites, which use light from the sun to collect data, is they can suffer from atmospheric interference and interference from cloud cover. So, this remote sensing data is absolutely fantastic when you can see the area you want to look at, and I can guarantee if you're very interested in an area, it will have a big lump of cloud on top of it. And so you'll spend a lot of time trying to remove that cloud cover and find a different date range in which there was some cloud-free areas. Here's the same image on the same day with Sentinel-2, and you can see that there's much better spatial resolution there, and you can start to see some of the details in the landscape. And so you can see quite visibly how our capacity to measure things in the landscape increases with the spatial resolution. Just as an illustration, though, we're not at the stage where we can pick out individual trees. This is the same area with Sentinel-2 and an aerial photograph. You can't see those trees in that image, and a lot of those pixels represent, a good number of trees in there. So we always have to be careful, especially at the edges of plots, for example. So what can we do with this data except look at the nice pictures? Well, perhaps the most useful class of sort of indices that we have for forestry are the vegetation indices, and there are a good many of them, and we can use them to do all kinds of things. And they have temporal resolution as well, so they change over time. And with trees, that's fantastically important. We have a good many seasonal species which change over time, and that can help us indicate the type of species that we have and their health sometimes. So species is a difficult one, but we can do some assessment based on vegetation indices. So here's a few of them. I haven't worked with all of them. We have a very good amount of them on the Orbify platform, and they're quite easy to build in. So if you're interested in any of them, please let us know. And so these are probably the first step for looking at forest using a single passive satellite, for example. So to summarize the vegetation indices, apparently there's 150 vegetation indices in the literature. I'm probably familiar with less than 20 of those, but they can be very specific, and they can be very use case specific, and that can be very helpful in some terms, but some of them may need some adjustment to fit with the context of the study that you're doing. So as I said, the vegetation indices change over time, which increases the utility. Some may need to be adjusted to the local environment. One of the key things I find about these indicators is they're often easy to interpret visually and show to others. And this is quite powerful, I think. Visualization is really useful to show people what's going on, especially with the trust thing. So we all love a pretty picture. So yes. Also, with the sort of increasing use of machine learning algorithms, often you can increase the performance of some of these models if you feed vegetation indices into these models rather than just a list of bands, for example. Some of the problems with these things is cloud cover and shadow. Obviously, I touched on that already. Big problem. Just from personal experience, annoying, isn't it? Clouds. I'm sure loads of people love clouds. Saturation is another issue where if you have, for example, very dense vegetation in some areas, some of these vegetation indices may reach a peak, so they are no longer able to show differences. And this is something that a lot of remote sensing data suffers from, is a saturation at very high levels, very low levels of whatever you're trying to look at. So I thought for fun, I might try and pronounce this forest, which is the Puszka Bioecka forest. I'm sorry to my Polish friends on the call if I pronounced that terribly, but this is a beautiful primeval forest, I think, in Europe, which is what I always wanted to go to. So here is some EVI anomaly data. So it's the vegetation indices that we've adjusted to show anomalies over time. And basically for this, a lower number means that there's something going wrong with these trees. So, sorry, I should have said the EVI is this enhanced vegetation index. So it's similar to the NDVI, the normalized difference vegetation index, which is very well used, but it's kind of more sensitive to areas with high levels of tree cover. And so in an assessment of this forest, we knew there was something going on here, and this is the current year. So we assessed the anomaly with respect to previous years, and we can see that the EVI decreases around the June-July mark. And it turns out that's due to these beetles, these bark beetles, which are quite cute, I think, but also ravaging spruce forest in this particular area. So this is another way that we can use vegetation indices to assess risk, either from pests or climate or fires or stuff like that. So yes, here's the normalized burn ratio, which shows us the vegetation that was burnt during these fires in Maui, horrible fires that occurred there. This shows the vegetation that was burnt from the beginning of of time. So it's not the fire that was generated by those fires last month or this month. So, you know, it's there's a few too many pink pixels there, but this is a fantastically useful indicator, not just to show what's been burnt, but the recovery of forest after it's been burnt. So what else does images show us? Well, images are not just sort of grids of pixels. They also have sort of structural information within them. Sorry, I did mean to say on that bullet point there, ideal for land cover classification. So this is a big use case for this kind of information, is trying to classify lands into their use case. So, you know, forest, shrub, grassland, that kind of thing, urban areas. So spectacularly useful for identifying different areas. And so, yeah, this dynamic world is probably the most sort of famous currently, one of those, which uses the Sentinel-2 satellite to do land cover classification. Back to my previous point about the textual information within images, new machine learning methodologies, in this case a two-stage convolutional neural network, was able to first identify the areas of palm oil plantation, and then use these regular patterns of trees to detect and count the number of oil palm. Now, this is only possible through the use of very high resolution satellite imagery, which is not always freely accessible. In this case, they used a satellite called QuickBird. But you know, if you have access to this high resolution data, you can start to build really exciting models that can do extremely interesting things. So the only issue with these models, obviously, is that they can be very computationally expensive, and you have to be able to set them up yourself and build these models often yourself. And whilst there are sort of out-of-the-box solutions, I suppose, for these kind of things, often there needs to be an element of adjustment in those models. Okay, sorry, it's taking too long. Okay, I'll rush through these. JEDI, fantastically useful satellite, currently hibernating in the International Space Station. It has kind of good spatial coverage, but it doesn't touch the boreal forests. There are other satellites which do similar things, called ISAT-2, which can make up for that information in the boreal forest. But this is a fantastically useful information which starts to give us an indication of forest structure. So this is what these maps look like, and they take they're a different type of data to use, but they are fantastically useful for forest structure. And what we get from these is canopy height, and height and biomass are related. And so this is a useful tool for us who, in the nature-based solution space, and particularly in carbon offsetting when we're interested in carbon stocks. Another great satellite for monitoring forest structure is the Sentinel satellite, and they use a C-band synthetic aperture radar instrument. The fantastic thing about this is that it doesn't bother with clouds. So what I mean by that is that clouds do not affect its operation, and it works in day and night conditions. Unfortunately, we only have Sentinel-1A at the moment. Sentinel-1B has gone offline, and I think is going to be put into retirement, which means I think it's burning up in our atmosphere at some point or something like that. And yes, and so this is another fantastic satellite for gaining information about forest cover. And this is also going to be complemented by a new satellite coming in 2024, which uses similar technology to map the biomass across the globe. Sorry. And I'll skip this because this is just a simple example about how you can use a canopy height data set to sort of segment your plots based on potential different characteristics such as maturity. In this case, this is a different stands of different ages, and they have different canopy heights. So one big point to make about these data sets is that they are reliant on very good ground truth data to accurately calibrate the above ground biomass maps that you can generate. It's always been a problem that there's never a data set nearby to your plot that you need to generate an above ground biomass data set, but there are projects such as GeoTrees, which are really interesting, trying to find plot data. Okay, here's the poll. I can't believe this has taken 30 minutes. Sorry, everyone, who's in 30 plus degrees. Have you added the poll?
The poll is
Yes.
launched, so you can carry on.
Great. I'll just get to the end of the slides, and then maybe we can sort of talk about the polls, maybe. Okay, we have 2, 3 polls going. Cool. Okay, just a few more slides. So basically, when remote sensing tools become fantastically powerful when you can combine multiple remote sensing data sets together and create powerful tools. So this is one of Orbify's algorithms, which is useful for tree cover mapping. This is the current sort of industry standard, I suppose, in some ways, which is the Hansen mask, which is updated until 2022 so far. And you can see that because of the poor, well, not poor, but 30-meter spatial resolution, we miss a lot of this clear-cut land. This is just an example of how it might look with our forest non-forest detection algorithm, which uses a variety of satellite sources together to create a better, higher resolution data set. And there's the summary. We made it to the end. I'm sorry that took so long. And so effectively, the story is we have a lot of data. Cloud cover is a problem for the passive satellites, but there's a lot of tools that we can use to describe various things. Fantastically useful for forest health and for monitoring, also risk analysis. We can do things like measure drought, we can measure proximity to urban areas and things like that, which factor into non-permanence risk and things like that. And then we're starting to see methodologies which can allow us to calculate the amount of carbon, the above ground biomass in forests all over the world. And I think that will really unlock the potential of this kind of data for nature-based solutions. And that's the end, I think. Might have been another slide. Thank you. Oh yes, there's a blog as well where we have some case studies. And if you'd like to know more about how to use our platform for this kind of thing, there's a blog post there.
Excellent.
Right.
Super. Thank you so much, Oliver. Great stuff. Why you cannot see me? I don't know why, but you can hear me, right? So thank you so much. Great stuff, Oliver. It's time for the Q&A session.
Yep.
Olia?
We already have a couple of questions in the chat. Question from Marcin, hopefully I'm pronouncing correctly. Are you modeling forest productivity using, for example, top height growth or site index with, for example, SLS data?
I don't think so. No, I think. Where's the question?
Yeah, if you scroll up, it's marked as a question. Scroll up in the chat just a little bit.
Okay, I can't find it. I don't think we have anything that. Are you modeling forest productivity, for example, using top height growth or site index? Okay, so we don't have the site index data set or anything like that right now. We do have various indicators of, say, soil moisture and soils. We have soil types, and we have, climate variables. But so I think the answer is no, but I think there may be some ready-made solutions that may be of interest. I would say reach out to the rest of the team for that particular question. So let's see if they can answer that a bit better.
Mangrove tools, please, facing high pollution density. Question from Jason.
Mangrove tools, please, facing high pollution density. We do have a mangrove mapping tool in the works. We have the global mangrove data set that is available on Orbify. That has a data set, I think, that goes to the end of 2020, but we have something in the works that will help you map mangrove cover, and we can calculate all kinds of indices to do with pollution, and we can map rivers, and we have water quality indices as well. So perhaps that will help with you there. So yeah, thanks Jason for the questions. I should say thank you to people for asking questions. I hope I can do a good job.
Next question is from Fergus. Do you provide ground truth data sets? This is the area where calculating biomass becomes difficult without it.
Yeah, I think this is a great question. I think the availability of ground truth data sets really provides a limit to the usefulness of some remote sensing products. And no, we don't provide ground truth data sets. However, I think there are ways of finding ground truth data sets, and we can build tools that can be complementary to those. So the short answer is no to that one as well, I'm afraid.
Another question from Christoph. In your opinion, what is best? Free online platform to do an initial GIS assessment in-house to understand the context of a project before reaching out to a company like Orbify?
I would say go to the Orbify website and sign up for a demo. I think you can access most of the tools for free already for a small trial, and have a go there first. I think it's tools like Google Earth Engine are really useful and fantastically versatile as well. But I think if you're wanting to do something quick and easy as a quick first time assessment, it could be a bit of a learning curve and too steep, I think, and time consuming for that. So I would say go to Orbify, but I'm biased there.
Fair enough.
Thanks for that.
Arildo, Jedi biomass is a relatively coarse resolution. How do you integrate it with other high resolution imagery, for example, Sentinel, to reach biomass estimation at high resolution?
Yeah, so the Jedi biomass data, I think the 30, actually I think there's a 10 meter resolution one now that uses Sentinel-2 imagery already provided for the year 2020, I think, for that. I actually think our next speaker may touch on this a little bit more.
Oh, and actually to the question of ground truth, sorry, I should have mentioned that we can actually integrate the ground truth data into the tool to calibrate the available data sets. Yes. Oliver is quite new to Orbify, so you guys have to maybe excuse some of the points that you might be missing. But Oliver, I'm here. A follow-up question from Marcin, I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. Just following up on my question, forest productivity is a quantitative estimate of the potential of a site to produce plant biomass. It is the most common variable in forestry. We can calculate using remote sensing data. I think it can improve usability of the data for forest professionals. Yeah, maybe it is something that Mateus can comment on.
Yeah, let's leave that one to Mateus, I think. I'm not aware of anything that we can use in the Orbify platform for this particular use case. Let's see. Yeah, I reach out to us, and we'll get back to you on that one, I think.
So, let's take one last question, and then we'll switch it over to Mateus's presentation. A question from Andrew: is it possible to use a tool like NDVI to determine different species on the ground? For example, plantain can be classed as a tree, especially when intercropped with other species.
I'm afraid this is a fantastically difficult problem and a very interesting one. I think we struggle to pick out species using remote sensing data alone unless we have a good idea of what's on the ground already. If we have good training data, we can start to get there and know that in certain countries there are species maps built using remote sensing data. But if you have, this works well if you have stands of single species or sort of low mix of species, maybe two. And I think honestly it's a very difficult thing. NDVI is not, you couldn't use that only to derive different species at all. So I think you needed more complex solution for that particular problem.
Enjoy this discussion because I think it's like something extremely interesting. I would say that NDVI, in some cases, yes, could use it, but I'm quite afraid to say for sure that this could be used. But what I would say, okay. What I would say is that now with the hyperspectral data, you can find some really good research, really good papers that they deliver. For example, the identification of different type of mangrove species by using hyperspectral data. And we are on a year that there is like some commercial hyperspectral data being released, as well as some open data. We have this nmap that can be also accessed and be used. So the hyperspectral data is changing the game on that sense. And then I encourage you like to take a look on these hyperspectral to be used to identify different species. And of course, nothing's perfect. In some areas where you have like high dense forest, as for example in tropical forest in Brazil, Indonesia, you will not be able to identify everything because some forests like are extremely mixed, so you cannot identify the species level. But yeah, you can have like good estimations.
All right. Well, I think it's a perfect moment to switch to your presentation, Mateus.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much, Oliver. Cool.
Thanks, guys.
I do not know why my camera is not presenting myself.
Yeah, I think ever since I enabled the spotlight for the slides, something something has screwed
cool.
up.
Yeah, never mind. I will present a PowerPoint, not myself, so no problem with that. Cool. Let me just start share my screen. Cool. And okay. So as it was said, I'm presenting. I am as invited to talk here. My name is Mateus. I'm from First Base. If you guys don't know First Base, please go check our website or LinkedIn. We are aimed to work heavily on conservation projects. That's like our first mission. So we have like a lot of things happening right now. So please keep up to date on our website. And one thing that is extremely cool is that, as Oliver said, there's a lot of things on satellites that can be done to like on this conservation monitoring thing. And it's really cool to see that that's a field that's growing a lot. You can have like a lot of things. You can have, for example, a mixed use of sensors and satellites to do like a near real-time monitoring with like low cost. So that's really cool. And yeah, so I will talk a little bit. Probably you guys are here because the title of the webinar is why are satellites like the game changer for effective carbon and credit assessment, and as well like the growth monitoring. And I will talk a little bit more on this growth monitoring thing. For those that do not know, we have like different types of projects. Like we have red projects that are projects related to conservation, and we also have like ARR projects that are projects related to reforestation, revegetation, afforestation, plantation of trees, this type of projects. And of course, there's like different type of projects as well. And on the sense of like afforestation projects, one thing that's extremely important is to know if is your like tree growing or not. Like imagine that you are have a planting scheme in Brazil. I'm from Brazil, as Carlos said. So imagine that I have planted some trees in Brazil, and now I'm here living in Portugal, but I want to check how good's my project like. So it's extremely important to know if this tree is growing, if the things is happening right or not. There's like any problem with like forest health. A lot of things, as Oliver said, like about issues in like using the vegetation indices to estimate like forest health and VI, and to see, okay, how good is my plantation. And on that sense, I would like to share like a really quick study that I did like some days ago for our real project that is on the Veja. Uh, Here you can see what like would be this growth monitoring thing. That's interesting because it's quite related with one of the questions that was about using the Jedi biomass. It's a coarse resolution, and how do you integrate it into other high resolution imagery and blah blah blah. So here it's more or less the same concept for Jedi biomass, but it's being used for height. And what's been done is that we have these Jedi footprints that are for height, and you have it like on the below imagery, like this one with a lot of points in line. We did like a fusion with SAR data, and we also did a fusion with Sentinel-2 data. And then using all this data, we used like this bunch of data to classify, to train our model. And based on that, we predicted the height on a specific area. So we do not rely only on the Jedi footprint itself, but we can have like imagery that shows the height per pixel. So you can see on the left more or less like how is like the concept of like joining these imageries to train the data, and then on the right you can see the result that would be this layer of forest height. And that's interesting because this was applied in a project, like a real project in Brazil, an Aveja project. And one thing that I would like to make it clear is that I'm not here to talk about the quality of this project, or if the project is a good one or bad one, the concept of the project, and blah, blah, blah. But if you want to know, just send me a message on LinkedIn, and we can chat about like this project itself. But the project basically is planting some eucalyptus. And so it's like a homogeneous type of plantation. So you have everything being planted, like different plots being planted every year since 2015, if I'm not wrong. So they planted like in different plots, in different forest stands, and they have this data also available on the website. So we can cross-check how our model performs against their data. So here is one example where I pick up like different images. The images here is 2018, 20, and 23, if I'm not wrong. But you can see on the chart that like I pick up like the data for different years as well. And by using the data, we could check that at 6 to 7 years, the developers of the project said that their plantation had 20 meters on that plot. And by using this model, we could find that our analysis is like aligned with what they said. So this could be a good alternative to them. So besides going to the field like every year, measuring the trees, they can start to use this approach to measure the growth. It's like more cost effective, but of course there is like a lot of things that need to be extremely careful, and like a matter of uncertainty validation of the model. It's not like, okay, this model works for this project, so I will apply it like everywhere in every project to every species. And we need to, I really want to highlight this point because nothing is perfect when we are talking about satellites. And if you mix satellites with carbon biomass estimations and carbon credits, carbon projects, so it's like you need to be extremely careful to do your assumptions and to build your models. So it's extremely interesting to know that this approach works really good, like it's in a really good sense when you're working on like homogeneous plantations, for example, pinus plantations or populus plantation or eucalyptus plantations in Brazil. You know that that tree like that you planted will grow like more or less homogeneously, so you can estimate the mean height of the stand. uh, it's not like an individual tree assessment, but like is the mean height of the stand. Of course, you have like pixel level, but it's important for you like to take into account like this mean height of the stand. And of course, this height can be used on allometric equations to estimate the biomass and then the carbon sequestration on the projects. And when you try to apply the same concept on like mixed plantations, for example, agroforest project, you probably can have some issues because sometimes you have every tree growing in a different stage or in a different age, different heights. So it will be extremely difficult, but it's something that's extremely interesting to be tested. So yes, you can do, but you need to be aware that, okay, I really need to validate my model. I really need like some ground truth data to cross check and say, okay, I'm doing like really good job. So I would just like to highlight this point because with all my experience on the carbon market in carbon projects, I've been seeing a lot of people doing like some models and not like being like, okay, let's not care about like this validation about like the real thing that's happening on the ground. They just like want to do like machine learning model, artificial intelligence, and on the end they are not doing like good estimations. And like this is like a really critical thing that should not happen. So we need like to be extremely critical with the data and to know that nothing's perfect, but we can do a lot of things. And that's cool to see that Orbify has the sense, okay, let's test, let's like do this research, let's put like the science on that. As for example, Oliver with like this as a scientist on this field, and it's really cool to see like people like him on Orbify doing this type of work. So yeah, that's it. I know that's extremely short presentation. The idea was really to not talk too much and present like a little bit what I am doing. Part of Forest Base, that's a conservation project, but I also extremely curious person, so I'm always reading and testing things and writing code like, oh, this is cool and maybe this can work. For example, recently I was using exactly hyperspectral data to analyze some mangrove areas in Brazil, and it was because I think, oh, that's a cool thing to do. It's not like a project. It's not something related with my current work. It's because I think that's like interesting to keep always learning. So yeah, thank you so much. And let's go to the questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mateus. Yeah, Q&A sessions. Any questions, guys? By the way, I will drop Mateus and Oliver's LinkedIn profiles here in the chat, so feel free to connect with them. I just switched.
I just received a question that was sent to me separately. Have you already tested your proprietary algorithms in tropical areas? Oliver, are you still here? I know that the answer is yes. However, that's the extent to which I can answer it.
I think many of our models probably work best in tropical areas. I think Jedi, for example, has good coverage over there. Cloud cover, always a problem in some tropical areas. So we have to work around that sometimes. But yes, I think the answer is yes.
All right, great. There is a question. Do you think that combining hyperspectral and radar data could take biomass estimation to the next level?
So hyperspectral information and
hyperspectral and radar data, combining it would take the biomass estimation to the next level.
I'm really interested in hyperspectral data. I've never worked with it, I'm afraid. I think that it sounds like that could do something very cool. But I wouldn't be able to say for sure what you could do with it that would take it to the next level. I think, again, it comes back to the need for ground truth data. I still don't think that we can really get away with not using something to validate our claims. I think we have, in terms of SAR data, some issues with coverage, and biomass project as well, I think, has 200 meter resolution for that biomass product. So yes, it's a very interesting question. In terms of spatial resolution, SAR does have really good spatial resolution. Yes, I think it could do, but we have to test things and make sure that they work, and then we'll know. So I can't tell you until I've tried, I'm afraid, and I haven't tried. Maybe Mateus has. He has some really, I think his the work that he just demonstrated just then is really cool. Being able to show trees growing over time using remotely sensed data, using Jedi, and his approach to that, I think, is really fascinating. And for those of you who are interested in afforestation projects and monitoring the growth of trees, I think that's a really, really interesting tool for you.
What I would say is that, like, I believe that yes, the hyperspectral data can put the things about like biomass on a next level. But next level doesn't mean for me that would be like better than what we have right now. So I agree with Oliver that like we need to test to say like, okay, it's better or not. But I believe that there is a lot of potential. I believe that like would be extremely good thing to be tested. But I mean in terms of accuracy, not on resolution itself. I believe that the resolution itself, it's extremely dependent of the resolution of the data. So if you have like 100 meters hyperspectral and 100 meters radar, you will not have like better resolution on the end because it's 100 meters both. So you cannot like have like, okay, 1 meter biomass estimation. But I believe that maybe on accuracy assessment, maybe it's like a thing that would be really good to be tested, and I have some feeling that would give like really good results.
Thank you both. I think there is a very interesting question from Arildo. Normally, the main focus for using the satellite data is on natural ecosystems like forest, but do you know and could reference examples of using this imagery for nature-based solutions in the cities? For instance, are the same sentinel of planet useful for delivering high-resolution tree canopy cover of tree height in urban cities? You're on mute, Oliver.
I am, and that's the first time I've done that, so that I'll get away with that one. I usually do it all the time. Really, really, really interesting question. And I know there are examples of cities like Singapore, for example, who have mapped every tree in their city, and that's a fantastic thing to have done. And I mean, the issue with singular trees in an urban setting is that they don't stand out. You can't see them with coarse resolution satellite imagery. You need high resolution satellite imagery for that. I think planet, I'm not sure if you could use that, but the kind of methodologies using some deep learning techniques like convolutional encoders to do object detection may be the best way to, if we're talking about single trees in an urban landscape. Obviously, there are some small patches of trees. It all comes down to resolution. It all comes down to context. I think just reading this question again, Sentinel planet. I don't think you could do it with Sentinel, but I don't have a specific example of it working with anything else either, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I agree with you, Oliver, and I would say that like everything depends on what's the size of this the forest on the urban side. For example, you can have like really huge parks. We have here in Lisbon a park called Monsanto. So yeah, you can like use the satellite like Sentinel to map canopy cover there. But if you're talking like about individual tree identification, I would say that like it's quite hard to know, and even more like on the tree height thing on urban cities. So I believe that like it's quite dependent of like what's the size of the urban forest.
I think there are some examples of people using citizen science to get that kind of information, whether you can take a LiDAR scanner. I know that some of us have that on our phones for some reason. I think you can use apps to measure the sort of diameter of it. Well, you can take a 3D scan of a tree, and I think they use that in some cases to measure the trees, but not canopy height as well. It's a really interesting use case, and it's not something I've considered before. Thanks for the question.
I actually asked Jakob to come in to just talk a little bit more about the cross check of the data.
Sure. Hello, good afternoon, good morning to you, to those of you located in other time zones. Regarding the cross-checking data, I think this is a crucial part of Earth observation, right? That you double-check what you are seeing from space down on Earth. And in Orbify, we are also always trying to cross-check the data against in situ measurements, against what we can observe on the ground. Actually, this is one of the reasons why we built our mobile application, an Orbify companion app that you can install on your mobile device and use it to capture data about forest, about biomass that you can find on the ground. So, Oli, I'm not sure if I'm properly answering the question. Maybe I missed one of the aspects. If you want me to, the person who asked the question, if you want me to be more specific, please write in chat. But in general, this is important, and we are doing it on Orbify, and we even built a specific piece of software to enable ourselves and our customers to do it more effectively.
I think that should cover it, unless somebody else wants to jump in the chat. We're going to take one more question from Lambert. I want to know whether by having previous biomass data of a particular project can impact the satellite imagery quantification of biomass in the current status of the project. Oh, who feels the best suited to answer that question?
Since I'm unmuted, I can take it, and then Oliver, Mateus, please jump in if you feel like it makes sense. So yeah, of course, short answer is yes. Having previous biomass data, if they are reliable, having any sort of previous reliable data is always important, and it can improve how the algorithm works. It can improve how you calibrate the algorithm. So this is why, yeah, we also enable this at Orbify to our customers.
Anyone else wants to jump in?
It was a long way of saying yes.
All right. I think we're out of the question. It's good timing because we're a few minutes over. I would like to thank both of the speakers, the Q&A person, Jakub, and Carl, my colleague Carlos, for moderating together with me. Thank you, everyone, for coming to the webinar. We hope it was insightful for you guys. Thursday, everybody is going to receive the recording as well as the readable materials. So you'll be able to follow most of the webinar content in the written format as well. You have also received the workbook. We'll send an extended version in the follow-up email as well. And if you ever want to check out our platform, there is a free trial available to everyone without any limitations besides the size of the area that you would like to monitor. So you can just simply go to orbify.com and go to the free trial. And if you'd like to speak with us, there is also an option to request a demo. So if you don't feel like checking it out yourself, you can always get in touch with us by requesting a demo. Thank you, everyone, again. Merci, grazie. Carlos, maybe yes. All right. Thank you, everyone, again. And until next time. By the way, next webinar is in September about feasibility and planning, best practices in feasibility and planning of carbon offset programs. So hopefully you'll be tuning in again.
Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Bye.